Good morning. Today I'm going to show you how to use SQL Server Management Studio or SSMS and to connect to a database. First create one. So if you've got it installed, you should get the SQL Server Management Studio, and then it will come up with this when you've clicked on it. So you do need to connect to a server, so it needs to be installed first. And once you've installed, you could go through Windows authentication or SQL Server authentication. So I'm just going to log into the Windows authentication, and then you can connect. Once you've connected, you will get the Object Explorer over the side. If you don't see it, you can go to the View menu and click Object Explorer, or F8 for short. So today it's going to be talking about the databases. I have got 2 sample databases here, but we're going to create one from scratch and then populate it with 2 tables. So if you right mouse click on your databases, it will give you the options. So we're going to create a sample database for our dream homes, and I'm going to put DB next to it because eventually we'll have a DW for data warehouse. So the DB is for your production database. Then just go OK. We'll talk about these in another video, but this one here, we'll just set the defaults. So now you've got the database, but you've got to create the tables because we've got no tables in here. So then we can start creating the tables and then populating them. So I'm just loading up my database that I've got created here. If you're generating it through a tool like Mockaroo, it doesn't give you everything I've got in here. First, it will generate the data with the structure. I took mine out and put it in a different file. And I've just documented it as a header. This is through a comment, starting and ending comments. The other thing is putting all your tables together, so when you go from your testing system to your live system, you'll have a copy of it in one place. So most of it is good. Mockaroo tends to give some of these a little bit small or a little bit large, so check all your varchars to make sure they're an appropriate length. The other thing I like to add is the identity. So identity is to auto-generate a primary key number. So it will automatically start at 1 and increment every future row by 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. So then you need to tell it which one is the primary key. So I've done it through a constraint here at the end. So you could just have the words primary key up here next to it, and that would work. So you just have them up there. But I like to do it in a constraint so you can get a reasonable error message show up if there's a problem with the primary key, which would be that it's already been used. That's the purpose of using this, so it can only be used once. So that follows the keyword constraint. This has to be unique for every single situation you have in your database. Another constraint can't have the same name. Then you have what the constraint is, primary key, and then you have what is that primary key, which is a customer ID up here. So I like to follow this convention with my name. So it's my table name. It's saying that it's a primary key constraint and it's invalid. So this will only ever show if you put in an invalid primary key. I've got 2 tables at the moment. The other one was my sales. I put the identity again, so it uniquely will create a primary key that's unique to every single row. So it will start at 1 and increment by 1. I have got the primary key constraint. Once again, sales is my table. It is a primary key constraint, and the sales ID here is what the primary key is. But I also have a foreign key constraint because there's a link or a relationship between the sales and a customer. A customer can have 1 or more sales. So in here, I've got a sales cust foreign key constraint. So that's just the name of it. It is a foreign key constraint on the customer ID that is referencing, because it needs to reference the relationship table, the customer table up here, and it's referencing the customer ID. So that's going to ensure that the customer down here, when you select it, exists in this table up here for that customer ID. So let's just create those tables in SQL Server. So when you're in here, to enter these tables, the easiest way is to go New Query, just in the panel up the top here. And when you go to New Query, you do need to ensure that the database is selected. It is selected here, but often I just use the word use and then connect to the database. So use, and then it was my dream homes. Then notice it's coming up as I type. Then paste that in. So that will ensure that it's in the right one. But if you remember, you could go to here and select the tables as well. And then you just need to hit this execute. So there's an execute here, and that will execute if it's valid. So in here, it's saying that doesn't exist. Because I misspelt it and it's called Dream Home. So Dream Home database, so let's try that again, and it worked. So now if I right mouse click and refresh, it will actually show the new tables in there. So to see what's in the tables, you can right mouse click and go Design. That will show you the structure of what we just entered and the lengths and the data types that we used for that. To see the data, which is none yet, you right mouse click and go select top 1000 rows. So once again, there is no data yet. So if I close those down and new query again, it has defaulted at this, so I'm going to leave it. And let's put in that data. So if I go back to the data that it created, and the order matters. So we've got sales and we've got customer data. Remember this one here, the customer ID, is being taken as a reference to the customer table. So any table that has a reference to another table needs to come in after the other table. So this one here doesn't have any references, so I can enter this data first. But this data you need to enter after the customer data because it's referencing the customer data, and it will error otherwise. So if I just select all that, I did generate 1000 rows, so it's a few too many to do manually. And notice in the top here, I'm inserting into customer, but I don't put that customer ID. That's because we called it identity 11, so it's actually going to automatically put the identity in for us. So if we go execute, it will tell us that there is some problems with that data because I changed the data types and I forgot to save it. So in here, these ones here have been changed. So a quick way to deal with that is to go find and replace. Replace that with what I put in, and then do it for the last name as well. So now it's fixed those up. So let's just copy all that in and execute it again. And it's worked. So now to test that data, right mouse click, select top 1000 rows. It does the top 1000 rows because if you've got more, it would be too many. But if you want to test it, right in the bottom right hand corner, it tells you. And if you just delete this stuff around it, you can just select every row and it will tell you how many rows are in there. Just put that in for a minute. Should have. Yeah, didn't seem to like it without the square brackets. It's normally okay with that. So now you can see it's still a top 1,000 rows. So you can see it's still put in my customer ID, even though I didn't have it in that code that we saw. So in here, there was no customer ID, and that was because it was auto-generated. So here, the customer ID still came in. So now we'll close that one down, and we'll put in the sales data. So now, new query, save that. So now it's once again doesn't put in that sales ID, but it's bringing in the customer ID from the other table. So now the customers are in there. This one shouldn't be a problem to execute. So I'll execute again, and I made another change again. I should stop making changes. So now, just to quickly update that one, I did change this one as well, called sales amount. I'll just replace all that, save it, and bring it back in here, and re-execute it. And it likes that. So now right mouse click on this one. Once again, you can go to the design, and the design will show you that's that sales amount that I changed the column. And then we can right mouse click and go to top 1,000 rows. So there's showing 1,000 rows, but if you just want to see if there was any more, and it's still showing the top 1,000 because that's all I had come through. But once again, the sale ID is coming through, even though the sale ID wasn't in here. And then these customers will be between 1 and 1,000. So you can see they're randomly selecting them between 1 and 1,000 because that's what the data was in the other table. So that's it from this video. And in another video, I will show you how to use this in a little bit more detail, as well as some other techniques from transferring data from here to the data warehouse. So thanks again for listening, and tune in again soon.